Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on personal finance. Specifically, we're diving into Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And, you know, you're really interested in the actionable stuff, right? The steps you can take to actually get your finances in order. So let's get right to it.
It's funny. This book really cuts through the noise, doesn't it? It's not like other personal finance books. One of the things that really stood out to me was Sethi's take on, financial experts. He basically says we don't need them.
Really? Oh, okay, I'm intrigued. Ditch the experts, huh? But how does he justify that? I mean, aren't these people supposed to know what they're doing?
Well, that's just it. Sethi says even those seasoned pros, those financial gurus we see on TV, even portfolio managers, they can't reliably predict the market.
Oh, okay. I see where he's going with this. So, like, if they can't get it right, what chance do we have?
Exactly. He uses real-world examples like, how even well-known financial experts and portfolio managers make wrong calls all the time. And on top of that, think about mutual fund fees, like 1.5 to 3% every year. That's a huge chunk of your return.
Wow, 1.5 to 3%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what does he suggest we do instead? Does he think we should all become day traders?
Not at all. He actually recommends something much simpler. Index funds. Basically, they just mirror the market's performance, so you're not trying to pick winners and losers, you're just riding the wave of long-term growth.
So instead of trying to outsmart the market, you kind of join it.
Interesting. Right, and guess what? Way lower fees. Index funds usually have much lower fees than actively managed funds, so you get to keep more of your money. It's like John Bogle, the guy who created index funds, always said, why try to beat the market when you can just join it?
You know, it really makes you wonder why more people don't choose index funds.
Yeah.
Okay, so ditch the experts, go with index funds. Got it. What else does Sethi have up his sleeve?
He introduces this really great framework called the ladder of personal finance. And it's basically a step-by-step guide to build, a solid financial foundation.
Ooh, a ladder. I like it. Okay, let's climb. Where do we start?
The first step is to max out your 401k match if your employer offers one. That's free money. You don't want to leave that on the table.
Makes sense. Free money is always good. What's next?
Then it's time to tackle high interest debt, especially credit card debt. Remember those high fees we talked about? Same principle applies here. Those interest rates are brutal.
So true. Credit card debt could be like a total nightmare.
Yeah.
What's the next rung on this ladder to financial freedom?
After you've got those first two down, focus on maximizing your contributions to a Roth IRA. It's a retirement account with amazing tax advantages, especially if you start early.
Okay. Roth IRA. I've heard of that, but I'm not really sure how it works. Can you break it down for me and for our listeners who might be in the same boat?
Sure. So basically, with a Roth IRA, your investments grow tax-free. So you contribute after-tax dollars, but when you withdraw the money in retirement, you don't owe any taxes on those earnings. It's like a really powerful way to build wealth over time, especially when you're younger.
Wow, no taxes in retirement. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so ditch the experts, invest in index funds, climb the ladder of personal finance. I'm seeing how this can make a difference. But what about our spending habits? Does Sethi want us to, live like monks and never spend money on anything fun?
Not at all. Actually, he has a very interesting take on spending. He calls it the conscious spending plan. It's not about deprivation. It's about, making intentional choices with your money. You decide what's important to you and allocate your funds accordingly.
So being mindful, not restrictive.
Got it. Does he have any examples of, how this works in the real world? He does. He tells the story about a woman, Lisa, who spends like $300 on shoes, which to some might seem excessive, but she's really responsible with her finances in every other area. She saves, she invests, she's got her debt under control. So his point is, you can still enjoy the things you love, just be conscious about it.
I see. It's about balance. Speaking of making things work, Sethi also talks about automating your finances, right?
Yes, he's all about what he calls automatic money flow. So it's basically setting up systems to manage your money automatically so you don't have to think about it all the time, like paying bills or transferring money to savings.
Ooh, I love simplifying things. Okay, how does this automation work? Does he have a specific system he recommends?
He does share his own detailed account management system in the book, but the great thing is you can totally adapt it to your own needs and preferences. The key is to use technology and smart systems to take the stress out of managing your money.
That sounds amazing. Less stress. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about investments, spending plans, and automation. What other gems are hidden in this book?
Well, there's one more essential skill he emphasizes: Negotiation.
Negotiation. Hmm.
Uh,
It sounds a little intimidating.
I know, right? But he breaks it down into really manageable steps. He even gives you strips and templates you can use. And he shares some inspiring stories, like this woman, Rachel, who used his techniques to negotiate a 28% raise.
Whoa, 28%. That's incredible. Okay, so he provides like real-world examples and tools so people feel more comfortable about negotiating.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're negotiating a lower interest rate on your credit card or asking for a raise at work. These skills are essential for, your financial well-being.
It's really amazing how many valuable lessons he packs into this book. We've only scratched the surface, and I'm already feeling like more empowered to, take control of my finances.
That's the power of I will teach you to be rich. It gives you a clear path and like actionable steps you can take to achieve financial success. And it's not just about the money. It's about aligning your money with your values and, creating a life you love.
Well said. We've covered a lot, but there's so much more to discuss. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive even deeper into Sethi's advice.
Okay, so we've talked about, those big picture things like ditching the financial gurus and loving those index funds. But what about like everyday financial tools, like credit cards? Sethi has some pretty interesting things to say about those too.
Oh, yeah, credit cards. It's like a love-hate relationship. They're so convenient, but like the interest rates can be crazy. Where does Sethi stand on all that?
He really emphasizes building good credit early on. And it's not just about getting loans. Good credit can save you a ton of money on interest, especially for big things like a mortgage.
That's a good point. We always hear about the dangers of credit card debt, but not enough about how good credit can actually work for you. How much of a difference are we talking here?
He actually quantifies it, and it's pretty significant. He says you could potentially save tens of thousands of dollars over the life of a mortgage just by having good credit.
Wow. Okay. That's a serious incentive to get my credit score in shape.
Yeah.
So what are some of Sethi's top tips for building good credit?
He boils it down to two main things: using credit cards responsibly and, this is key, paying your bills on time every time.
Got it. No more late payments. But what about those times when, life happens and you might accidentally miss a payment? Does Sethi offer any advice for, like, damage control?
He does. He has a whole section on what to do if you miss a payment, including strategies for negotiating with those credit card companies to try to minimize the damage to your credit score. He even uses his Indian background to his advantage, sharing tips on how to, communicate effectively and negotiate with customer service reps.
That's so Ramit. Always using your unique strengths to, come out on top. Okay, so building good credit is part of it. But what about, like, managing and ultimately paying off credit card debt? That can feel really overwhelming.
Oh, totally. He doesn't shy away from that at all. He acknowledges that credit card debt can feel like super heavy and guilt-inducing, but he gives you a really structured approach to get out of it.
Yeah, that feeling of being overwhelmed is so relatable. It's like, where do you even begin when you feel buried in debt?
Well, Sethi points out that for most people, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's usually this gradual thing, and that can make it harder to see the problem until it's like a huge burden.
It's like that boiling frog analogy, right?
Yeah.
You don't realize how hot the water is getting until it's too late. So how do we get out of that hot water, so to speak?
He says to focus on tackling those high-interest credit card debts first. That goes back to his ladder of personal finance, remember? Get that high-interest debt out of the way before anything else.
Makes sense. The longer you wait, the worse it gets with that high interest. But what about those of us who are like living paycheck to paycheck? Where are we supposed to find the extra money to even start paying down debt?
Sethi has some practical strategies for that too, like cutting unnecessary expenses or, finding ways to increase your income. And he also encourages people to negotiate with those creditors, to try to lower their interest rates, which can make a big difference.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Reducing expenses, boosting your income, and negotiating better terms. Sounds more like a holistic approach than just a quick fix.
Exactly. And he even shares his own personal experience with becoming debt-free, which is really inspiring. It shows that it's possible, with the right mindset and the right approach.
It's definitely encouraging to hear that even, someone like Ramit, who's now this successful finance expert, has been there himself. It makes it feel like more relatable and achievable. Okay, so we've talked about credit, debt, and the importance of investing. But investing can seem so, like, intimidating and confusing. How does Sethi make it, easier to understand?
Well, one of the first things he does is dispel this myth that investing is all about picking individual stocks, like trying to find the next Apple or Tesla. He says trying to beat the market is a fool's errand, even for the pros.
Hold on. So he's saying we shouldn't be trying to pick the next hot stock. What's wrong with that approach?
Well, he backs it up with data and real-world examples showing how even those seasoned investors, they often can't consistently do better than the market over the long term.
So all those stock picking shows, they're basically just entertainment, not a real way to build wealth.
Pretty much. And that's where index funds come back in. Remember those? Sethi's a huge advocate for them. He says it's a much more reliable and efficient way to invest, especially for the long haul.
Right. The join the market, don't try to beat it philosophy. Makes sense. But what about the risks? Isn't the stock market inherently risky?
He definitely acknowledges that the market has its ups and downs, but he emphasizes focusing on those long-term benefits of investing, and not getting spooked by those like short-term dips and spikes.
So like don't panic and sell everything when the market takes a nosedive, right?
Exactly. It's about having a plan and sticking to it, even when things get a little crazy. And remember, doing nothing, just sitting on your cash, that can be the riskiest move of all. Inflation will eat away at your savings if you're not putting your money to work.
So investing isn't just for like the wealthy or, the financial wizards.
Yeah.
It's a crucial part of building long-term wealth. And Sethi makes it feel more accessible. But how does he address the fact that, everyone's financial situation is different? Everyone has different goals.
He doesn't just stop at the basics. He also gets into more advanced strategies like asset allocation and rebalancing. And he tailors his advice to different life stages and, risk tolerances.
Okay, I'm curious. Break those down for me. What are asset allocation and rebalancing? And like, how can they help me reach my financial goals?
Sure. So asset allocation is all about deciding how to divide your investments among different asset classes like stocks, bonds, and real estate. It's like creating a well-rounded portfolio that fits your risk tolerance and how long you plan to invest.
So like if I'm younger and have more time to recover from potential losses, I might put a larger portion of my investments in stocks, which are like riskier, but also potentially more rewarding.
Exactly. And then as you get closer to retirement, you might shift to a more conservative approach with more bonds, which are generally less risky, but maybe a little less growth potential.
Makes sense. So where does rebalancing fit into all of this?
Rebalancing is just periodically adjusting your portfolio to make sure it stays aligned with your target asset allocation. Because as the market moves, some investments might do better than others, and your portfolio could drift away from your original plan.
So rebalancing helps keep your risk level, in check. And it keeps your portfolio from becoming like too heavily invested in one area.
Exactly. It's like making sure your ship is sailing in the right direction, even when the seas get a little rough. And the great thing is, Sethi gives you clear guidance on how to, figure out your ideal asset allocation and how often to rebalance.
Wow. Sounds like he's really thought of everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered investing basics, some more advanced strategies, how to manage debt, build credit. Is there anything else in the book that would be helpful for our listeners?
It's really interesting. Sethi goes beyond just the numbers and talks about creating what he calls a rich life, which is about aligning your finances with your values and your goals. He has a whole chapter on this, covering everything from navigating finances and relationships to buying a car, even buying a house.
That sounds really cool. I'm curious to hear more about this rich life approach. Let's dig into that after a quick break. Okay, so we've talked about investing, budgeting, credit, even negotiation. Now, let's get into how all this ties into building what Sethi calls a rich life. What does he mean by that exactly?
It's really about, going beyond just the number. It's about aligning your finances with what you value, your goals. It's about creating a life that feels rich, and fulfilling, not just financially secure. He actually devotes a whole chapter to this. He talks about navigating finances in relationships, buying a car, even purchasing your first home.
That's so important. Money isn't just about, spreadsheets and interest rates. It's about how it impacts our lives, our relationships, our happiness. So how does Sethi approach these big life events from a financial perspective?
Well, he starts with relationships, which, can be a little tricky when you bring money into the mix. He provides a framework for discussing finances with your partner, and he really emphasizes open communication and, working together. One of his big pieces of advice is to even if you think you know what you want to do, start by asking your partner, what they think, what their perspective is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's about making your partner feel heard, like they're part of the decision, not just like being told how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's about partnership, right? Both financially and emotionally. What other practical tips does he offer for, managing money in relationships?
He talks about setting shared financial goals, creating a budget that works for both people, and finding compromises when your priorities are different. Like if one person is a saver and the other is a spender, it's about finding a system that feels fair to everyone involved.
Sounds like it takes a lot of like communication and compromise to make it work. Okay, so relationships, check. What about big purchases like buying a car? Does Sethi say you should always buy used or, go for the most practical, fuel efficient option?
You might be surprised to hear this, but he actually says, buy a car you love.
Really? That kind of goes against everything we hear about, like
Yeah.
depreciation and cars being a money pit.
Yeah, but
Like,
his point is, if you're going to be spending a decent amount of money and driving this car for years, you might as well enjoy it, right? It's about aligning your spending with your values, making choices that bring you joy.
I like that perspective. It's not about, denying yourself. It's about being intentional. But I'm guessing he doesn't just stop at buy what you love, right? Does he give any, like, practical advice on making smart car buying decisions?
Of course, he balances that like buy what you love idea with practical advice too, like choosing a reliable car, negotiating a good price. He even shares his own experience using a service that helps you find like the lowest price without having to haggle with dealerships.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I hate haggling. It's so stressful.
Okay, so he provides tools and resources to make the process, less painful and more in your favor. What about buying a house? That's another one of those big life events that can feel like financially scary, especially if it's your first time.
He breaks the whole process down into, like, manageable steps, starting with saving for a down payment. He really emphasizes being financially prepared before you even start looking at houses, so you don't end up with a mortgage you can't afford.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of house hunting and forget about, the long-term financial implications. So preparation is key. What other insights does he offer on navigating that whole home buying process?
Well, he talks about how your credit score impacts your mortgage rate, which ties back to, what we were talking about before with credit. And he gives tips on negotiating with mortgage lenders, understanding all the costs involved, like property taxes and insurance and maintenance. It's cool how he connects all these different pieces,
Yeah.
and shows how they all work together to create like a complete picture of your financial well-being.
Exactly. And one of the biggest themes throughout the book is taking action, like actually applying what you're learning. He's a big fan of that do IT now mentality.
Love that. It's not enough to just, passively read about it. You got to put it into practice.
Mm.
Does he give any specific tools or like resources to help people get started?
Oh, yeah. He's got tons of them. He provides like actual scripts and templates you can use, like a script for negotiating your credit card interest rate or an email template for negotiating your salary. He even has worksheets and checklists to walk you through different financial tasks, like creating a budget or planning for retirement.
Wow, he really makes it like easy to take action and see results. It's almost like having a personal finance coach right there with you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. He makes all this stuff that can seem really complicated, much easier to understand. And he gives you the tools and the encouragement you need to feel like you're in control of your money.
So after this deep dive into I will teach you to be rich, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important message is that financial success is something anyone can achieve. It's not about like luck or some secret formula. It's about making informed decisions, building good habits, and taking action.
And the sooner you start, the better. Thanks to the power of compounding, even those small steps you take early on can have a huge impact in the long run.
Absolutely. It's never too early to start taking control of your finances and building a life of, freedom and abundance.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a challenge. After hearing all of these strategies, all these insights from Ramit Sethi, what's one area you're excited to apply to your own life?
Think about it. Could you automate something in your finances this week? Maybe try using one of Sethi's negotiation scripts. Or, even just start a conversation with your partner about your financial goals.
Whatever it is, take that first step. Knowledge is power, but action is what creates real change.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into I Will Teach You to Be Rich. We hope you found it insightful, engaging, and most importantly, empowering.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new and exciting topic, so stay tuned. And until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building the life of your dreams.